Queues that snaked for blocks at early voting venues in the country's most populous city, emulating scenes that have dotted the voter landscape throughout the country as forecasters expect 2020 to produce the highest voter turnout in 112 years.
For me personally, I think this is probably the most important election of my life anyway. So I think I'd rather get it done, get it in, feel good about it, do my civic duty, and be ready for when it happens, just to make sure it all gets in, it's all voted through. I'm excited about it. I'm excited to vote today.
There's different options to vote. I really want to do it in person. And I'm just really excited, and there's several days of early voting. I wanted to come on the first day, and there's something about going in person and filling it out myself and turning it in that I just feel is secure.
Similar scenes in the critical swing state of Florida, where President Donald Trump also cast his early vote Saturday.
Mr. President, who did you vote for today?
I voted for a guy named Trump. Thank you very much, everybody.
The rush to vote a clear sign of the intense interest in this contest between the incumbent and his Democratic rival.
I think people should vote for the party they believe is more about personal freedoms than about more laws and rules and stuff like that. I think people should vote for freedom of choice. People should be free to choose what they want to choose. You don't like it? That's tough sometimes.
This is a lifetime election. This is a very important election because it's time to end the divisiveness, the corruption, the hate. And with respect to the actual policies of this administration, I think that they've been quite harmful.
As the swing state focus continues, with President Trump expected in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona and Nevada this week, while Joe Biden will travel to Georgia and Florida, articulating divergent messaging on the COVID-19 pandemic as cases continue to surge to record levels across the country.
If I don't win this state, I'm going to come back and I'm going to be very angry at you. Epic job growth, groundbreaking therapies, a safe vaccine that quickly ends the pandemic. By the way, with or without it, and we have it. Great companies. But we're rounding the turn. Drives them crazy when I say it. We're rounding the turn. Cases, always cases. They don't use the other words.
We saw him refuse to take responsibility for the crisis that should have been met with real presidential leadership. Instead, it has cost hundreds of thousands of Americans' lives and pushed millions into poverty. We saw him diminish the pain felt by so many Americans. He's given up. He's quit on you. He's quit on your family. He's quit on America. He just wants us to grow numb and resigned to the horrors of this death toll and the pain it's causing so many Americans.
A mix of anticipation and anxiety characterizing emotions on both sides of the political divide.
So we've officially now arrived at the final stretch, and this is the state of the race. Record numbers turning up to vote. Swing states, that as usual, will determine the outcome of this race, and a president who is trailing his opponent. That's the broad consensus across multiple high-quality polls. But if 2016 taught us anything, it's don't count President Trump out, even though his path to a second term is getting increasingly narrow. Sherwin Bryce-Pease, SABC News, New York.
And let's cross to Sherwin now live in New York for us. Sherwin, even here in South Africa, we're feeling the anxiety and the anticipation, like you said. So 8 days to go. Joe Biden still leading the polls significantly. That record-breaking early voting. Just give us the state of play and how this will inform the coming days as well.
Well, I guess the question is, Francis, why are we seeing these levels of enthusiasm, right? We correctly point out there that we're over 60 million votes in early voting, far surpassing already early voting from 2016. So we're seeing numbers on the streets, blocks and blocks, long queues lining up for votes across this country, really speaking to an enthusiasm that is driven by this pandemic and fear around health and safety of Americans. So people getting out early, ensuring that their mail-in ballots are getting in, given the aspersions that have been cast over this by the Republican side. But beyond that, I think there is fear and anxiety depending on which side of the political divide you come from. If you are supporting Donald Trump, you don't want him to lose. And his supporters consistently since his election, Francis, have been by his side. That 40 to 45%, that wall, his firewall has not broken. The difficulty facing Donald Trump is that the firewall is not enough to elect him. And what we're seeing is his bleeding support in terms of independent voters that took a chance on him in 2016. And this is why Joe Biden has continued to sustain what has been a commanding lead nationally, an average of between 8 and 12 points, but also the edge, Francis, in those critical swing states based on how you win an election in the United States, called the Electoral College. And what we are seeing in places like Texas, in places like Arizona, in places like North Carolina, Georgia, and all those Midwestern swing states, Joe Biden has maintained an edge, even in those traditional Republican strongholds. If he, for example, were to turn Texas blue, game over. If he wins Florida, that critical southern swing state, game over for the Republican candidate. So, as we have consistently been saying to you for weeks, Donald Trump has the most work to do. He's got 8 days to close that window, and that window is now narrowing, Francis.
And very quickly, Sherwin, you showed us some of that hard-hitting final statements from the candidates. But just wrap up for us, what are their closing arguments in these closing days?
It's really difficult to pin down Donald Trump's closing argument. He is more, because of his lag in the polls, an attack dog in these closing stages, trying to cast aspersions on the integrity of the Biden family, trying to link Hunter Biden to his father, corruption, talking about corruption, although the source of this corruption is the Trump family, which in itself is a contradiction in terms. He doesn't have a real healthcare plan in terms of, when he's posed those questions, whereas the Democrats are focused on this virus. They are focused on the Supreme Court makeup. Later today, the Republicans-controlled Senate will confirm Amy Coney Barrett to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And in 7 days after the election, there will be a critical case before the Supreme Court to decide the future of the Affordable Care Act known as Obamacare. So Democrats are hammering home at your health care is on the ballot, and of course, a national strategy in terms of dealing with this coronavirus. It's out of control, Francis. We hit new records in terms of new cases on Friday. Epidemiologists and public health experts are saying that within weeks we could be reaching 100,000 new cases per day, and that will be the highest level we've reached since this virus appeared in the United States in late January.
All right, thank you very much. Outlining the issues, SABC News Correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease, and he will be taking us through the next 7 days. Tomorrow, it'll be a week to the U.S. elections. Stay with us for his nightly report.